Hello and welcome back to the Apprentice 1-to-1 podcast. This is episode 5 of our week-long effort to join in the celebration of National Apprenticeship Week and the theme of skills for life. We've gone through a few varying stages of entering into the electrical industry, some of the career prospects and such already, so please do check back through those if you've not heard them as yet. But today we're going to have a look at some of the further training that you can do into your career and also some of the things you can look towards if you have intentions to become a business owner. So some of the industry-specific courses come with some well-established codes and numbers that make sense to us out in industry but maybe don't mean a lot to you as new entrants. And it's important to note that a lot of these are historically and systemically linked to the city and guilds numbering system, and we now have lots of other awarding bodies such as EAL, BPEC, LCL and such as well. So there's other ones out there. But if you're looking towards your inspection and testing, as an example, and we've covered this in a little mini-series on the Apprentice 1-to-1 podcast with Jamie and Craig in the past, and they've been really, really popular videos, is the 2391. That's the City and Guilds numbering, but again, EAL have an option to do the same thing. And that is focused in on inspection and testing. So if you were wanting to go off and do EICRs, for example, then you could do some top-up training along that. It is important to note that through the course of your apprenticeship, you do cover inspection and testing. It is part of your apprenticeship. You will be able to inspect and test your own work and such, but it's just a formal way of recognising those qualifications. It is actually a harder course of industry, I would say. It's a bit of a benchmark that lots of employers will be looking for their qualified supervisors to have, and certainly their testers. So if you have plans to go into those areas of industry and you want to progress and develop, that is a great course to do. It's usually run sort of over 5 days, 3 to 5 days. When you go off to a training provider, you'll take in some of the technical training and you'll have to do assignments through the course of the week. So there's some practical that you need to do, so demonstrate some of your testing skills, multiple choice exams. We've covered it on the podcast, so you can have a look into that should you wish, but that really will help you kind of open doors to more job prospects down the road. So it's one to think about. Usually I advise people to look at doing that sort of between 2 to 5 years after you're qualified. However, most of my apprentices tend to do it around the time they're either just finishing their apprenticeship or have just finished it to get it in their arsenal of talents, if you like. So there's no set rules, but usually that would be my advice to other people. Get yourself qualified, get out in industry, 2 to 5 years down the road, see if you can get your 2391 done. We have to do our regs updates as well, so when there's a change in the wiring regulations, so as newly qualified people, you will have done your regs course as part of your apprenticeship. You do not need to then take a regs course, enter in industry, you're already qualified. But like the rest of us, when they change the colour of that book, or there's a new amendment even sometimes, you will have to do a wiring regs course. I approach it that on a full change of edition, I do a regs course. So when the 18th edition came out, I did one then, but I haven't done one on any of the amendments, either at 16th, 17th or 18th in the time as my working life as an electrician. I just do CPD at that stage. Otherwise, I think the costs get a bit ridiculous, and usually they're just tweaking little bits and pieces where you can cover it off pretty simply. So yeah, when it moves to 19th edition, you're going to have to do what is the 2382 City and Guilds, and again there'll be an EAL variant and others alongside that. They tend to be just a day or so. Depends, you can do them over 3 days if you're wanting to, so you can go off and cover it in more detail, but usually once you're out in industry, the 1 day course is fine, and you just have to take the multiple choice exam and get a bit of training on what the changes and updates might be. You can also do your pat testing. That's something that we have to do a lot of as electricians that maybe isn't the most enjoyable, but there is the 2377 City and Guilds, I think, and there'll be other numbers based on the EAL options again, where you can look at your inspection and testing of electrical equipment. It's not actually called pat testing. I think that was a slogan that was invented by people who like to think it's just stuff with a plug top on it. And that was the first dropping of the gates of entry into the electrical industry, allowing these people to become professional pat testers. But that's a gripe of the past. So yeah, if you want to add that to your arsenal again to widen your scope of employment prospects, just a day or so's course, and it'll teach you how to test electrical equipment. Again, I think you can do longer courses on that should you wish, of 3 to 5 days. Depends on your experience and if you're wanting that extra tuition. You can also do your EV training. Now, for me, the EV training is a bit of a grey area. I would say the smaller domestic stuff and the courses in and around that, as a qualified electrician who understands the regs book, you really probably shouldn't need to have to do that, is the truth. However, if you want to get a job with most employers installing EVSE charge points, you're going to need to have it. And yeah, it's one of those courses I've done that I got the least value from, if I'm honest. There is the large-scale EV course, and as I understand, there's not many training providers who currently offer it. I know that Sparky Ninja, David Watts, is doing it at his centre up in Stockton, Middlesbrough area. So you can look towards that. I think that is a really interesting one because there isn't much training in and around it, and it's not really covered in the regs and such. So if you're getting involved with some of these huge rapid chargers that you see at the motorway services and you want to start doing that, and again, we need bucket loads of them, loads more. I know from having an electric van in our fleet that it's difficult to keep that charged up, certainly in the rural environment we live, and lots more of these rapid chargers are going to be needed as more people move towards electric vehicles. So there's that. I think that's a week-long course, and again, it will teach you how to install those large-scale EV charge points. I think it's actually quite a hard course. I'm not sure if it's level 3, but from what I've seen, it's probably more set at level 4 standard, whatever they've graded it at. So that's a difficult one. I think there is a bit of a design you have to do in there as well. But go off and check Sparky Ninja's website out and have a look for more details on that. I'll drop a link in alongside this for anyone who is interested. But that's something that you'd be looking at if it's bespoke to your specialism, if you like. There's been lots of chats on specialism with the guys over at Fixed Radio, so Thomas Nargi and Paul Meenan, when they've had discussions around that, and Sam and Jamie on the Electricians podcast as well. Jamie's a big proponent of specialising and the benefits you can get of that. And I know from discussions I've had on this podcast, going way, way, way back to speaking with Craig Gallagher, I think was the first who mentioned it, and really niching down, like becoming an absolute expert in what you do in a particular area of industry is the best way to have long-term success. And Craig's an absolute powerhouse with his business, Quinergy. I always remember that chat with him, and he's dead right. And a lot of other people since then have said very similar things. Jamie, as I said. So yeah, looking at that is a good way to go. The primary role of these qualifications, I think, when you are in industry, it's not just collecting them for the sake of having them. They need to have a productive value for you. We have to do CPD. We have to log our CPD hours now as industry, certainly if you're a qualified supervisor in the EAS document. So if you've not seen that, the EAS document sets out what you need to do to be a qualified supervisor now. And that's been adjusted and set in place because of some of the very short course training we had that you guys and girls won't be familiar with entering industry now, but over the last 15, 20 years, we did have a bit of a problem in training and the entry routes to industry. So now that's been more clearly defined. So if you're wanting to be a qualified supervisor, basically you're rep to a CPS provider, and we'll get into what that means on another episode. There is a certain prerequisite of qualifications you will need to do that, and a certain amount of CPD you need to do. And that CPD can be something from the eFix team. They have CPD stuff. It can be from attending a trade show, taking in one of the IET segments, or a tech talk from Mr. Staniforth and Austin, from Mr. Austin from CEF. They're awesome tech talks. It could be some manufacturer-specific training. It could be an ECA or NAPIT or NIC webinar where they've got it CPD accredited. There is loads of different ways you can build that stuff up, and you have to do a certain amount each year. I think it all boils from the Hackett report, and I've covered this on other chats I've had before, that I think we've gone CPD crazy, and just ticking boxes and logging stuff isn't the right way to really lift up the standards that we need. But it's what we have to do now as industry, so make sure you are recording that if you are in further training towards being a QS. The one not to dismiss is the manufacturer training, and that's generally the most useful when it is good, I would say. So we've done some with Give Energy, for example, which was fantastic. It really teaches you how to install and commission systems you're installing day to day, so it helps you in your actual job. And again, there's stuff from My Energy, there's stuff from Sonnen, all of the manufacturers in the EV, PV, battery storage place, Solar Edge, their academy. Wow, that's brilliant. It's all there. It's all free to access. And if you're wanting to set yourself apart again, going back to some of these earlier episodes around trying to find an employer, having done some of that training would really stand out. So it's worth looking at. You don't need to be a qualified electrician necessarily to take it in and understand it, and it is totally free. You can work through it at your leisure from home. You don't have to go off to a physical training space, aside from, I think, the My Energy training, that is actually with them. But yeah, take advantage of all of that. It's all free. It's going to be bespoke and unique to the products. Obviously, they're trying to ensure they've got a high-skilled installer base, so their warranty recall work is smaller. There's a payback for the manufacturers, and equally they're attracting sales reps to them. If you're trained in a particular piece of equipment and you install it week to week, you're going to be selling more of their products for them. So it's not some charitable activity, but it is a great free resource for you to check out, both whilst you're in industry, whilst you're wanting to get into industry, and when you're an established electrician. I do lots of manufacturer training. I've had to as part of the PV journey, but I've enjoyed it. It's been of great value. So I think we've reached our time limit again on that. So that's kind of the further training aspect. We did mention the business side of things, and we'll cover that in another episode, because I'm going to get into that in a bit more detail, I think, because lots of people do tend to end up going off working for themselves. So we'll dive into that later on. If you've got any questions around what we've discussed and you want to know more about these courses, I'll drop a link in the description over to the City and Guilds and EAL websites, so you can go off and have a look at those. They're the two bigger awarding bodies out of industry, and I'll point the guys and girls of Apprentice One-to-One community towards any of these comments to hopefully get you the right answers. Again, this little series of podcasts are all aimed at supporting National Apprenticeship Week and the Skills for Life theme alongside that, and I hope these have been of some use. We'll be back on the next one. Thank you for watching. So you've been listening to the Apprentice One-to-One podcast, and a huge shout out to our supporters and sponsors, and they are Team IMD, which is Proteus, Tamlex, Centaur, M2 and others in that group, LK Energy Switches and Controls, Modexsoft Electrical OM, Klein Tools and Superrod, Test Instrument Solutions, aka TIS, and the Installer Trades Installer Show group. We massively appreciate that support, and thank you very much. We hope you enjoyed this week's show.